There's a famous story which took place many years ago in the concentration camps of Bergen-Belsen. It was the first night of Chanukkah, and the Yidden, the Jews that were there, had somehow managed to scrape together some oil and a little Chanukiah and a wick so they could light the menorah. And the tzaddik that was there in Bergen-Belsen was the Bluzhever Rebbe, Zatzal, and he was given the kavod, he was given the honor of lighting the menorah on the first night of Chanukkah. And he sat there, or he stood there right before lighting, and he looked around at all of these men and women who had gathered together to be able to light the menorah there in the horrors of the Holocaust. How they'd risked their lives to put together the oil, and while the Nazis were not watching them, they gathered in one small little room, one area, where they could light unseen. And after scanning the faces of everyone that was there, he proudly took the light in his hand and he made all of the 3 brachas that we make on the first night. Ner Chanukkah, Al Hanisim, and Shechianu. And with great joy and glee, there in the darkness of Bergen-Belsen, he lit the menorah. After they sang Haneros Halalu and Ma'otzor, one of the men came over to the Rebbe and asked him, I understand that you can make a bracha, Lahadlik Ner Chanukah. I understand you can make a bracha of Al Hanisim, on the miracles that Hashem made for us then, He should make for us now. But how can you make the bracha of Shechianu? Shechianu ki imanu v'iganu lazman hazeh. We are blessing Hashem that we are so grateful that He has brought us to this time. We're sitting here in the depths of the concentration camps. There's crematoriums to the side. People are being killed left and right. We should thank Hashem, Shechianu, that He brought us to such an auspicious time in our lives. So the Bluzhever Rebbe looked back at this man and he said to him, I myself thought the exact same question. I'm about to light the menorah. How can I say Shechianu? Shechianu is said with simcha, with joy. Shechianu is said when you recognize all the goodness that you have in your life. Shechianu is when the person sees, last year I also lit a menorah, this year also I made it to this time. How can I say Shechianu here where I am? And the Rebbe said, when I was looking around the room at everyone's faces, and I realized that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a nation that so much loves Him, and so much cares about His mitzvahs, and so much wants to do what is right, I thought to myself, on you and on this, I will make a Shechianu tonight. That we are still standing here together, although we are in hiding and the time is difficult. But that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has people left in the world that so badly want to fulfill His will, that deserves a Shechianu. Life is all how you decide to look at it. You can see everything going on, looks like Gehenna, looks like it couldn't get worse, but you could be a Bluzhever Rebbe and you could see the spark and the flame inside the neshamas of every single Jew, and that makes you say Shechianu. You could be living in the lap of luxury, you could have everything going for yourself, but if there's one small thing that a person doesn't have, that jealousy can eat them up alive and they don't see any of the good, any of the bracha that they have in life. Chanukkah is an amazing time for each and every one of us, because it's a time that the lights of the menorah, the lights of Chanukkah, they enlighten us, they allow us to see. They allow us to see the things that we don't normally see with our own very own eyes. And the Gemara says, ask the famous question, my Chanukkah, what is Chanukkah? And the Gemara Rashi explains, is asking, what is the miracle on which Chanukkah was sanctioned for? Why do we celebrate this holiday? And the Gemara goes on and explains, there was a battle between Yavam, between the Greeks and the Jews, and we were an army that wasn't really up to date on all of the technicalities of warfare, but we beat the enemies. And they came into the Beis HaMikdash, into the temple, and they found one flask of oil. There was only enough to last for one day, but it lasted for 8 days. And therefore, miracles took place, and we have a Yom Tov, we have a holiday called Chanukkah. Says the Gemara, L'shana acheres, in the following year, after all these miracles took place, Kavum v'asum yomim tovim, Chazal, the sages, they have fixed for us, for all generations, these days that will be yomim tovim, they will be holidays, festival, B'halel v'haidah, to sing praises, v'haidah, and to give gratitude, to give thanks. There's one mitzvah that seems to be missing from the Gemara over here, which is quite puzzling. The Gemara says there was a time the year before, there was a battle, there was a fight, we won the war. We come in the Beis HaMikdash, we want to light the menorah, there's only one little flask of oil. It was supposed to last one day, it lasts for 8 days. What a miracle, says the Gemara. So now the following year, the sages instituted the Yom Tov of Chanukkah. And you know what Chanukkah is for? Lahalel ulahaydais. To praise, and Rashi explains, to say Hallel every single day. Ulahaydais, to give thanks and gratitude, to say Ala Nisim in your prayers. Where's the central mitzvah of Hanukkah? There's one mitzvah that the Gemara leaves out. And that is, what? The menorah. If somebody would ask you, what's the main mitzvah of Hanukkah? You would say, Ala Nisim. You would say Hallel every single day. If somebody asks you, what does Hanukkah mean to you? You would tell them, lighting the menorah, the Chanukiah, and eating donuts. You're stealing my jokes, yeah? And eating donuts, and eating latkes, and getting gifts, and getting off of school. That's what Hanukkah means. So the central mitzvah of what Hanukkah, of what the Yom Tov is all about, the Gemara says, they didn't even make the Yom Tov after such a thing. Just so you can give thanks. Gratitude, praise Hashem. Where's the menorah? Why did the Gemara leave off the mitzvah of lighting the menorah? What? Okay. So the menorah is not for the miracle of the oil. The menorah is to remind us of the miracles which took place. Okay. It's a good theory.
But also for the oil. Not saying it's not for the oil.
Oh, but so then, good. So then we both have the same question. So then why doesn't the Gemara mention the mitzvah of lighting the menorah? Let's make the question even stronger. Anybody daven today? Yeah, I'm sure that you did. Everyone raises their hand to make sure that I know that they prayed. Yeah, of course I know that you daven. You looked inside your siddur in the Ala Nisim. Yeah? Does the Ala Nisim itself mention the miracle of the oil? That there was only enough for one day, but it burned for 8 days? The whole prayer that is instituted for us to add into our davening, into our benching when we eat bread, that entire prayer does not talk about the miracle of the oil which was found and miraculously lasted for 8 days. Now you're right, it says over there at the end, after they won the battles and they won the miraculous wars, they came into the Beis HaMikdash and they rekindled the menorah. It says that. But it doesn't talk about the miraculous story of the oil. Why not? Doesn't make any sense. How can the main mitzvah that a person has on Chanukkah, it's not even mentioned in the Alanisim, and the Gemara itself leaves it off? So remember, as we said in the opening story with the Bluzhever Rebbe, life is all how you see it. Life is all the perception that you have. And just because HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes massive miracles, and that's when you begin to see how Hashem runs the world, a person should never doubt for a single moment that there aren't thousands upon thousands of miracles that are transpiring in their life every single moment that we are alive. The famous words of the Ramban in the end of Parshas Bo, and I'm sure that many of you have heard these words. I heard once from a Talmud, a student of Rav Yecheskel Levenstein Zatzal. Rav Chatzkel was the Mashgiach in Mir and later in Ponevezh. They said that Rav Chatzkel Levenstein almost never, ever gave a drasha without mentioning these words of the Ramban, because he felt that this was central to our existence. Listen what the Ramban writes. It's coming at the end of Yetzias Mitzrayim. We've been exiled, we've been redeemed. Moshe Rabbeinu is leading the way. The Egyptians have been destroyed. We're going forward in life. And we have a mitzvah, like it says in the Torah, we have a mitzvah to remind ourselves of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the exodus from Egypt. Says the Ramban, Umin anisim hagedolim u'mefarsamim. From the opened and revealed and the great miracles in life, Adam moide benisim hanistarim. A person comes to be moide. He comes to admit and to give gratitude and thanks for the nisim hanistarim, for the hidden miracles that are in his life. Shehem Yesod HaTorah Kula, which is the foundation of the entirety of the Torah. The Torah is filled with open miracles, filled with the plagues of Mitzrayim, filled with the splitting of the sea, filled with Maimed Har Sinai, filled with Moshe Rabbeinu being a prophet who's able to bring everything that Hashem says into this world. Look at the lives of our forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Look at the miracles of Yosef. Yosef HaTzadik gets thrown into a pit. He gets sold into slavery, only to become second in command to the king of all of Egypt. It's nothing short of a miracle. And the Torah is filled with miracles. But why does the Torah do that? Because it wants to reveal something very precious. And that is, once that you recognize there's something called a miracle in this world, then you can begin to see that really everything in your life is nothing short of a miracle. She'ein la'adam chelik b'Torahs Moshe Rabbeinu. And a Jew should know that they have no portion in the Torah of Moshe until they believe that in all of our words, and everything that happens to us, shekulam, everything that will happen to you, nisim are miracles, ein bahem teva uminhagos shel olam, that have nothing to do with the nature or the way in which this world runs. Everybody woke up this morning? You're here, right? Did you think to yourself when you opened your eyes this morning, wow, what a miracle? When you got out of bed on your own 2 feet and you stood up straight and you didn't wobble and you didn't fall to the ground, did you think to yourself, wow, that's a nace, that's a miracle? Or did you think, well, that's the way that it works every morning? Or, like the Ramban is insinuating over here, did you not think at all? You just woke up, opened your eyes, got out of bed, got yourself ready, put on your clothing so you look your best for the lighthouse, came down here, went to your classes, and you're just going to go through the day, go home, go to sleep at night. And that's the way that life works. Says the Ramban, do you know why Hashem made so many open miracles? Because He wants us to start using our brain and thinking to ourselves. If that's a miracle, and Hashem did something miraculous openly, maybe really everything that Hashem does in this world actually is a miracle. Ein bem teva uminhag shalom. There's no such thing really as nature or the minhag, the way that the world runs. Bein berabim, bein beyachid, whether it's in the masses, happening in public, or whether it happens privately between you and Hashem and nobody else knows what's going on. The Maharal writes that the gematria, the numerical value of the word ha-teva, the nature, which we explain as the nature of this world, the laws of nature, the way that the world runs, is the same gematria as Elohim, as God Himself. Because there is no nature in this world. There are no laws of nature that the world is going to run according to those laws and it's never going to change. Who is the one that is running everything? That's the Ribbono Shel Olam. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's through the revealed miracles, says the Ramban, when you begin to look and so inquisitively and so curious, you see the way that Hashem runs this masterful world. It makes you realize, actually, I woke up this morning. That's a miracle. You say Asher Yatzar after you go to the restroom. Why do you say Asher Yatzar? You have to thank Hashem for something, the way that the world works. That's the way that it works. No. It is a miracle. And that's why in the Shulchan Aruch it is brought down that the only bracha that we ever mention, the Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory, which means that's where Hashem Himself is dwelling, the only bracha is the blessing of Asher Yatzar. Because we have to realize that when our body is working properly, when our body is running like a well-greased machine, when you can eat and you can relieve yourself, pardon my French, and everything goes the right way, and there's no issues and there's no problems, that's a miracle. You ever speak to somebody with no intestine? Rahman al-Islam? You ever speak to someone who cannot use the restroom in the natural way? You ever speak to someone that walks around in excruciating stomach pains all day long because of all of their conditions, their physical ailments? If you would meet them and you would talk to them, then you say Asher Yatzar with a different kavanah. But the Ramban's saying every time that you say Asher Yatzar, Kisei Chvaydecha, your Kisei HaKavod, your throne of glory, Hashem. Why am I talking about Hashem's throne of glory? It's normal. No. There's nothing normal in this world. Everything is miraculous, the way that Hashem designs everything and runs everything. There's a beautiful ma'aseh, I heard this many, many years ago. There was a religious doctor who was the head of the ICU of the emergency room, I believe in Sloan Kettering in Boston, Massachusetts. We'll call him Dr. Ackerman, I don't remember his name. And Dr. Ackerman was a Kiddush Hashem wherever he went. He was very careful to make sure that he always left a good name for the Jewish people. He treated his patients with kindness. He knew how to talk to the family members, and he did his work exactly the way that a dedicated doctor should. One day he's in the emergency room, or he's in his office, I believe, filling out some papers, and he hears over the loudspeaker, "Code blue, code blue." Anyone's becoming a doctor? Persian girl that's not becoming a doctor must have come to the wrong place, yeah? Your husband, Code blue means someone is in the throes of death and they are dying right at this very moment. And they announce code blue, dining hall, dining hall, dining hall. So Dr. Ackerman jumps up out of his desk and he runs to the dining hall And he sees all of the doctors, paramedics, nurses around someone on the floor. And he looks over and he sees there's a woman that has cardiac arrest and she is dying in the dining hall of the hospital. And as he walks closer, he sees that the doctors and the paramedics that were working on her CPR, trying to get her back to life, they get up and they start shaking their head and they say it's too late. And Dr. Ackerman looks at this lifeless body on the floor and he says, quickly, give me the defibrillator, which is that machine that you can put on their chest. And he goes over to the woman, he tries once, nothing. Once, a second time, nothing. And he says, Hashem, I'll try one more time. And suddenly they see life that's coming back to her. And they start massaging the heart with all the different things that they do. And before you know it, this woman is alive and she becomes conscious. And Dr. Ackerman tells the paramedics and the nurses and the doctors, take her to the room, give her this medication, put her on this IV, sit her up in the bed, and keep monitoring her throughout the day. She's going to be okay. Miracle. A miracle. Back from the dead. It's the end of the day. And Dr. Ackerman is getting ready to go home. And he doesn't always check on the patients at the end of the day, but he says to himself, you know what? This particular woman, her name was Mrs. Kelly, she's not a Jewish lady. I don't have to flaunt that I saved her life. But I'm sure that it will be a very great Kiddush Hashem if I come in with my yarmulke on and I ask her how she is and she sees that I'm the one who saved her life. He walks into the hospital room and Mrs. Kelly is sitting up in the bed and her husband is sitting next to her. And when Dr. Ackerman walks into the room, her husband jumps up and he says to his wife, there he is! There he is! That's the man who saved your life! There he is! And at that point, Mrs. Kelly begins sobbing. She is crying uncontrollably. And the doctor starts getting nervous. He hopes that she has enough strength and health to be able to handle her tears. And finally, when she calms down, she says to the doctor, Doctor, what can I say to you? Thank you? Thank you is what you say to a person who holds the door open for you when you're trying to walk into a building. Thank you is what you say when you ask somebody for a glass of water and they bring you a glass of water. Thank you is what you say to the boss when he hands you the paycheck at the end of the month. You say thank you. Doctor, you gave me back my life. I can't just say thank you. That wouldn't suffice. That wouldn't let you know how I feel. So I want to tell you something, Dr. Ackerman. For the rest of my life, whenever I am enjoying my life and I realize all the blessings that I have, I will say thank you, Dr. Ackerman, for saving my life. When I'm going to walk out of these doors and I'm going to get into my car and I'm going to take a breath of life, I'm going to say thank you, Doctor, for my life. When I go home and my grandchildren come and they're sitting on my lap and I'm looking at their smiling face, I will say to you, Dr. Ackerman, thank you for saving my life. And when I go on a beautiful vacation with my husband and we're standing looking at the marvel of God's creation at a beautiful sunrise, I will say thank you, Dr. Ackerman, for giving me my life. Thank you, that's not enough. I will thank you for the rest of my life. Dr. Ackerman was very moved by this woman's words. And he was very humbled by what she had to say. And he wished her well and a life of blessing and health. And he went on his way. And as he walked out of the doors of the hospital that night, He stood there on the sidewalk and he looked up at the Ribbono Shel Olam and he said, Hashem, thank you? Is that what I say to you? Thank you is what you say to a person who holds the door open. Thank you is what you say to the person who brings you a glass of water. Thank you is what you say to the boss when he gives you your paycheck at the end of the week. But to you, Ribbono Shel Olam, who does everything for me, who gives me life and health and a wife and children and grandchildren and success, and all of the numerous miracles that I have in my life, thank you? No. I will say thank you to you for everything that you have given me, Hashem. And I will never stop saying thank you. Says the Ramban, if you want to be part of Klal Yisrael, you want to be part of the Jewish people who live b'Torahs Moshe, with the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu gave over to us in our Sinai, we must begin to recognize that every little thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does in our lives, it's nothing short of a miracle. And when a person lives from the time they wake up in the morning until they go to sleep at night, and they recognize this miracle and that miracle and this blessing and that blessing and this good and that good, you become a person of Haidah. You become a person that is constantly living with gratitude. Constantly living with thank you. Thank you. That's what you say to someone who gives you a glass of water. Thank you very much. And this is what the Torah, and this is what the Yom Tov of Chanukkah is coming to teach us. Chanukkah is lahalel ulahoidos. It is the time that a person begins to recognize all of the many miracles that we have in our life. I'm sure that you noticed over the years in the special bracha of Modim, which means we are thanking you, Hashem, and we bow down in submission, recognizing all the good that Hashem does for us. We say in that tefillah, Ve'al nisecha shebechol yom imanu. We are thanking Hashem on your miracles that are with us every single day. Ve'al nifleisecha, and on your niflois, your amazing wonders, v'toivaisecha, and your goodness, shebechol eis, that you do to us constantly, erev v'avoker v'tzaharaim, in the nighttime, in the morning, and in the afternoon. V'al nisecha shebechol yom, on the miracles, on your miracles that you do with us every day. Does Hashem make open miracles with us every day? Does He save us from our enemies every single day? Does He make magical moments where He interferes in someone's life to push away the enemy or push away the challenge and allow us to go gracefully into the sunset? No, He doesn't. However, says the Eitz Yosef the following, Ubechol yoim, every single day, Kara le'ish ha'Yisraeli, the following thing happens to a Jew. Nisim rabim, numerous miracles happen to every single one of us every single day. Ve'ein margish, unfortunately, we don't sense them. We don't feel them. We're not aware of them. Kidduchsiv, like it says, La'olam nifloyos gedolos levadoi. In the famous Tehillim of Hodu LaHashem Ki Tov, which we say also in our davening, one of the lines over there is, La'olam nifloyos gedolos. There will always be amazing wonders, levadoi, to Hashem himself. Why would Hashem do amazing wonders to him? Let him do the wonders to us. Says the Eitz Yosef HaRotzain, it means the following. Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu makir b'niflois v'nisim. Hashem recognizes the miracles. Hashem recognizes the wonders. Ve'ein ben Adam makir. Unfortunately, we don't recognize the vast array of miracles that Hashem is giving to us constantly. V'lulei nisi Hashem. And if it wouldn't be for all of the miracles, kvar chas v'shalom tamnu ligava, we would already have ceased to exist in this world. Says the Eitz Yosef, you want a good piece of advice of how to say these words in the prayer Moedim every day when you're bowing, you're thanking Hashem, make it easy for yourself. Start to tell yourself and recognize, I am surrounded by miracles. I might not see them. I might not recognize them. I might not even be aware of them. However, Kara Le'ish HaYisraeli, every single person, every single day happens constantly. Miracles that we are unaware of. Says the Ramban, we can make it even a little bit more practical and down to earth. And that is, learn to see the regular, natural things of this world as nothing less than miraculous. You all, of course, know the famous Gemara. Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa and his wife were very poor. They didn't have enough money, even for Kiddush, enough money to make challah, enough money barely to light the candles on Shabbos. And one day, Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, Friday night, as the sun is going down, Shabbos is coming in, he sees his daughter is sitting in the house and she's very sad. And Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa says, Biti, my daughter, why are you so sad? She says, Abba, you don't believe what happened. I wasn't paying attention. I reached in the cabinet to take the oil to light the candles Friday night. And instead I took vinegar by mistake. And I filled up the candelabra and I lit what I thought was oil. But now I realize afterwards it's really vinegar. And although it's lit right now, certainly it's going to go out in a very short amount of time. And it's already Shabbos and I can't change it to oil. So how sad. Remember, they didn't have lights like we have. Part of the reason we light Shabbos candles in the room where you have the meal is so you can see. And soon she said the lights are going to go out and it's going to be dark. We won't be able to see on Shabbos. Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa said over the following words to his daughter. The one who decreed that oil should burn is also the one that can decree that vinegar will burn as well. So don't worry about it. Hashem makes the oil in our house burn every week, He'll make the vinegar burn also. What did Hashem do? He made an open miracle for Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa and his family. The vinegar not only burnt through Friday night, it burnt all of Shabbos day, and on Motzi Shabbos, Saturday night, they lit the Havdalah candle from that light. What's the point of that story? You're not going to have miracles like that. Try it this Friday night. I guarantee you. Oi, by mistake I lit the vinegar. Okay, just like Hashem makes the oil burn, He'll make the vinegar burn. It's not going to work. If it does, please tell me. I have a lot of things I want you to daven for. Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa is teaching all generations. It's no less of a miracle that the oil burns than if vinegar would burn uncharacteristically. Because the same God who is decreeing light the oil and the oil will burn means there's no such thing as teva, as nature. It's all Elohim, it's all God. And therefore, says the Ramban, begin taking advantage of the thousands of miracles that Hashem does for you every single day and recognize, just like He took us out of Mitzrayim, just like He allowed us to find one flask of oil, Just like that oil lasted 8 days, just like the vinegar burnt, see that when you breathe. During the month of Elul, I was having some severe sinus issues that were already going from the end of last year, and I had to get a surgery, a major sinus surgery. And the whole time I was trying to figure out, obviously nothing happens for no reason. Everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends to a person. I was very sick and the surgery was a very long haul, the recovery. Why did Hashem do this? What does Hashem want from me? Every time the Gemara says, Yisur in Bon Allah, if a person sees suffering that comes upon them, you need to examine your deeds to figure out what does Hashem want. So when they originally took the CAT scan of my sinus area, I was only clogged up from here all the way down to here on the left side of my face. Okay, one side, not so bad. They gave me medication, nothing worked. I went through whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, 3 days or 2 days before the surgery, they sent me in for another CAT scan because they want to just make sure that things look the way that it does. When they get the results back, my entire head from here all the way down to here, both sides of my nose was filled up with this sinus infection. So it, Baruch Hashem, traveled to the other side of my face. So when that happened, I realized, that's probably the message. We say in our davening every single day, Kol ha-neshama tahalel ka. Every neshama, every soul should thank Hashem, should praise Hashem. Says the Midrash, Al tikre neshama, don't say the words on every neshama should praise Hashem. Rather, I'll call neshima neshima. On every breath of life that you take, praise and thank Hashem, because that's a miracle in itself. So when it was only in one nostril, I couldn't say that Chazal, because it was only called neshima on every breath. But once it went called neshima neshima, on every breath and breath of life, then I realized Hashem just wants me to be a much more grateful and thankful individual. Says the Ramban, everything's a miracle. Everything is a miracle. And if you begin to look at your life in that way, you will live a miraculous life. The pasuk says, as we mentioned, Haidu la Hashem ki tov ki le'olam chazdai. Haidu, glorious, we thank you Hashem. Ki tov, because you are good. Ki le'olam chazdai, your chesed is eternal, it is forever. We thank Hashem because He is good, because His chesed, His kindness is forever and ever. Says Rav Gamliel Rabinovich in his commentary on Tehillim, he says the following. If you look in the Radak over there in Tehillim, you'll see the following idea. Haidu u'shvachai la'Hashem yizbarach. We're giving gratitude and praise to Hashem. Why? Hatam, the reason is, kevan shu tov, He's good. Umashpi aleinu ach tov, He only brings good upon us. Umidas chazdai nimsheches la'olam vayed, and His attribute of kindness, it is in our lives constantly. Loikei midas chazdai shel basa v'dam eina ela lefisha. But when a person does good for us, it's only temporarily. If they bring you the glass of water, if they bring you your paycheck, if they bring you a chair, you know the famous Maisa, I forget, one of the mashkichim, one of the great mashkichim in the yeshiva, once asked to speak to two boys. And the two boys, he says, I don't have chairs, go bring chairs. And so the two boys each bring their own chair and they sit down on their chair. And mashkich said, Chaval. They said, what? He said, Chaval, you could have done a chesed just now instead of thinking about yourself. You could have brought a chair for him, and you could have brought the chair for him, and then you will get a chesed along with it. The chesed that a person does is limited, time-bound. The chesed that Hashem does, it's constant. And this is the next idea that we have to discuss. Everything's a miracle. Everything is a miracle. Everything is good from Hashem. What if you're struggling? What if you're having a hard day? What if you're having a hard life? Do you know people that have hard lives? People, they're called Einai Mutzlach. They just don't have mazel. They have no success. Every single day, one after the other, you hear another sob story about them. How do you see, wow, what a miracle. Such a miracle. How How do you see Hashem? You're so kind, you're so good. I realize just like you took the Jews out of Egypt, so you made my life Gehenna. Thank you so much, Hashem. I really appreciate it. Just like you made a miracle for the Jewish people to light the menorah only one day, but it lasted for 8 days. The fact that I haven't had a job in 8 years, Hashem. I love you, Hashem. Thank you very much. How do we say such things? How do we see Ki le'olam chazdo, his chesed is constant, it's always, even in the times where we don't see it. Says Rav Gamliel Rabinovich the following: Kevin she'adam mitzad atzmo kochaisav mugbalim. A person on their own is limited in their resources, in their abilities. That's the way that it works in this world. Ukemo kain, therefore, af shnois chayev kitzuvim, and therefore we have also a limited lifespan. No one lives forever. You have 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, 120 years. 120 comes, that's it. That's the end of the day. Lekach av midas chazdo mugbelas. Therefore, the chesed that a person is able to do is also restricted. It's also has its gvul, it also has its boundaries. There's only so much. Mashein kein Hashem yizbarach. However, Hashem ein leisaifu gvul. He has no end. He has no boundaries. He's not confined. He has no limitations. The kaven shekain, and since that is true, af lemidas chazda ein saifu gvul. There is no limitation on the chesed, on the acts of kindness that he does. And even though shepa'amim einikeres midas chazda shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu ein basar, even though sometimes you will not recognize the kindness and the goodness and the miracles that Hashem is sending your way, mikol makom, nevertheless, tzarich lahamin be'emunah shleima, you must believe with complete faith. Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu goymel imanu chasadim la'olam. Hashem is constantly giving us acts of chesed. V'af ma shenira ke'anhaga b'midas hadin, even though sometimes things don't seem to be so good, b'yeseidu rachamim v'chasadim gemorim. The foundation of it all is rachamim, mercy, and complete chesed from Hashem. Which means, like the Bluzhever Rebbe from the very beginning, he's standing there in the Holocaust in Bergen-Belsen, one of the worst of the concentration camps, and he's asking himself, how can I make the bracha of Shechianu right now? When he saw the chesed of Hashem, that there were still Jews that were alive and didn't lose their faith and continued to serve him even in the darkness, he said, that's good. That is chesed. That is kindness from Hashem. As there's a beautiful book, it's called the Holy Woman. It's kedai, it's worthwhile to read it. There's a woman, I think her name was Rebbetzin Schneer or something like that. She was a woman who went through the concentration camps. She was Mengele, who was the biggest rush of them all in the camps. She was his pet. What does that mean? He experimented so cruelly on her. It's a miracle that she survived. At the end of the war, it was humanly impossible because of what he had done to her body. She was not able to have children. Nevertheless, she rose up on top of all of that. She got married, and she told her husband before they get married, I cannot have children. And he said, that's okay. Let's get married. And they went on to have a life of kiddush, of holiness, of sanctity. And they were mashpia. They had an impact on so many Yidden. One of the people that she famously had an impact on was a woman by the name of Sarah Yocheved Rigler. Yeah, she wrote the book, Holy Woman. She herself, Mrs. Rigler, was in the hippie generation, and she had left America and she went to, of all places, India. And she was in an ashram. An ashram is like the Indian Buddha temple. And she was meditating day and night in that temple. And one day, unbeknownst to her, Some frum rabbi decided, he heard there's a lot of Jewish young souls that are searching for the meaning of God. He went from Israel to India, and he started running seminars and groups and giving shiurim and talking to these people. And he convinced Mrs. Rigler, look, you're a Jew, you're in the ashram, you're living like an Indian, why don't you go to Jerusalem and live like a Jew over there? Just try it, see what it's like. And she did. And she went, and the rest is history. She became a very devoutly religious woman who has written numerous books and speaks across the country. She tells over the following story in this book. She got very close to the holy woman. And the holy woman would beat out of her head all of the nourishkeit that she had in there from the hippies, from the 60s, peace, love, liberal, everything. One day, she says to Mrs. Rigler, you know, the ashram, the place where you were before, very bad place. Auschwitz is a good place. Now you tell a liberal-minded American in 1969 such a statement, you have just sent the shock of her life through her system. She says, excuse me? The ashram? Peaceful. Everyone's so nice. It's so warm. It's so loving. It's spiritual. She said, the ashram is a bad place because you sit selfishly and you meditate for yourself all day long. In Auschwitz, we were able to do chesed, take care of a fellow Jew, give them a little morsel of food, let them cry on our shoulder, pick them up from the floor when they had fallen, hug them and embrace them and let them know that we cared about them. Auschwitz, where you could do chesed, is actually a better place than the ashram, which is completely selfish, not selfless. Says Rabbi Gamliel Rabinovich over here, even when you don't see the things in your life look like they are good, know that there's a Ribono Shel Olam. And know that La'olam Chazda, his chesed never stops. And know that even when you think he's not there, he's right there. Just like when you look outside, the Rav Hirsch writes, when you look outside by a rainstorm and the clouds of doom have rolled in and you see only darkness and the rain pouring down, you know that behind the clouds is the sun. And a sunny day is going to come again. And the sun never disappears. So too in the life that we lead, a person has to understand, even when you don't see, Hashem is doing chesed after chesed, miracle after miracle with you constantly. Ki le'olam chazdo, because his chesed is eternal, it is forever. We just need the eyes to be able to see the bracha that is there. And as the Eitz Yosef writes, unfortunately, that is our challenge. Our challenge is we're not always margish, we don't feel it. We don't see it. You go to the restroom, you say, Yotzer, when did you stop and think what a miracle it is and spend 20 seconds out of your life to say Bekavana? When was the last time in Maidim? The Stipler writes, Ein Shir L'Maidim, there's no end to how much gratitude a person can give to Hashem. When was the last time you got stuck bowing down like this because you're so overwhelmed with all of the acts of kindness and miracles and chesed that Hashem does? Probably never. But maybe it behooves us when we say the Moedim prayer every single day, just a little bit to think to ourselves of one kindness that Hashem has done for us today. And tomorrow think to yourself, one kindness that Hashem does to me that day. And so on and so forth. You will become a person who's living not just gratitude, but as the Ramban writes, you'll be a person who is living with miracles in their life all of the time. And perhaps that's the answer to our original question. How could it be that the Gemara speaks about the miracles of the flask of oil? It was only enough to last one day, but it lasted for 8. And then when we talk about the holiday of Chanukkah that was put into motion by the sages, they say it's lahalel ulahoidos, to praise and to thank Hashem. But it doesn't say that it's to light the menorah. And the Ala Nisim doesn't talk about the miracle of the menorah. Why not? Because as the Ramban is writing from the Nisim Galuyim, from the open miracles that we see in our lives, we are supposed to understand everything in our life is a miracle. The oil burnt for 8 days instead of 1, miracle, miraculous. But that's not the point. The point is, praise and thank Hashem for all of the miracles of your life. Ala Nisim is the time to hodah, to give gratitude to Hashem. Don't focus in on the oil. Focus in on a life of miracles. It doesn't always look miraculous. Sometimes it looks pretty dark and ominous. If you will believe in the Ribono Shel Olam, Ki La'olam Chazda, it's all good, then you will find even there Chesed, Rachamim, Nisim v'niflois that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is making in our lives constantly. And that is the way that a person has to try to live. If a person through the 8 days of Hanukkah will gain more than just a few pounds, they will gain the ability to express their gratitude because I'm constantly seeing the miracles in my life. You have been successful during this Yom Tov. You will walk away inspired and infused and elevated because you realize HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He. He made miracles for the Chashmonoim. He made miracles for Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa and his vinegar. He made miracles for this woman in the hospital whose life was saved. He makes miracles for everyone. And He makes miracles for me constantly. How much I have to rejoice about and to give thanks about and gratitude to Hashem. I want to leave you off with one story. I can't stop telling this story everywhere that I go because it's so powerful. And if you heard it from me someplace else, my apologies. Several weeks ago, there was an RCC conference for rabbis and for rebbitzins. And one of the speakers was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Jason Weiner. He is the chaplain of Cedar Sinai Hospital. He's a fantastic Kiddush Hashem, the things that he's done over there to glorify God's name and the Torah and the Jewish people. It's just fascinating. A mensch, a Talmud Chacham, a Yirei Shemayim, and he deals with everything in such an ehrlich, such a beautiful way. So he was asked to speak because he wanted to tell over to the rabbis different things that are going on in the world of medicine right now that we should be aware of them in case one of our balabatim, in case someone that we are connected to asks us these shaylas, these questions, what can we do? Unfortunately, right now in the world, there is something that is called assisted suicide. What is assisted suicide? It used to be there was something called euthanasia. Yeah, what is euthanasia? An oxymoron in of itself. Euthanasia, mercy killing. What is mercy killing? Mercy killing meant that if you had a person who was terminally ill, didn't want to live, whatever the story might be, Rahman al-Islam, they would tell one of their loved ones, I can't take it anymore. And that loved one would be granted the permission by this person, you can take my life, I don't want to deal with it. And I remember many years ago reading a story of a husband and a wife. They were older. And the wife, after a long, wonderful life together with her husband, she came down with a machla, with a sickness. And the doctors gave her 6 months to live. She told her husband, I don't want to go through the pain, so kill me. But let's plan my death, she said. We'll make it beautiful. They got the poison in the injection. And she said, okay, what we're going to do is like this. We're going to put on our favorite dance song. And I'm going to take the poison, and then we'll have the last waltz, the last dance together, and I'll die in your arms. Won't that be beautiful? And sure enough, that is exactly what they did. And when the man was brought to court for killing his wife, he couldn't understand why they called him a murderer. He was just fulfilling the last wishes of his wife. Mercy killing. Well, in the world today, they said, oh no, that's murder. But there's another kind of killing that you can do, and that's called when you kill yourself. It's called suicide. We're going to allow such a thing to take place. But a person doesn't want to, God forbid, jump off the roof, God forbid. So they want to do it in a noble, respectful way. So how do they do it? The doctor prescribes some hamavis, death pills. You take 2 pills, and don't call me in the morning because you won't be able to. You take those 2 pills, a few minutes later, you're dead. This is becoming not only prevalent, it's being legalized in many states and countries across the world. So Rabbi Weiner had the following halachic shaila. In Cedar Sinai, because it is a quote-unquote religious institution, it works in the following way. The person tells the doctor, I want assisted suicide. Doctor says, why? And he asks him a bunch of questions. If the doctor is convinced that the person over here is sound mind, he says, okay, you have to go through a psychiatric and psychological evaluation as well. Then the person sits down with the psychiatrist and psychologist, passes all of the tests, and they say, okay, you know what? Your head is on straight. You know what you want to do. You could kill yourself. Go ahead. Now he has to get sent back to the doctor for the doctor to prescribe the medication. But before the doctor can write the lethal prescription, they have to have one meeting with the chaplain of the hospital. A Jew meets with Rabbi Weiner, a non-Jew meets with their chaplain, and they have to have a theological conversation if taking your life is the right thing or the wrong thing. So now if Rabbi Weiner is successful, so then maybe he'll save a person from killing themselves. But if he fails the job, that means he's the last one standing in the way before they go back to the doctor, and the doctor writes the prescription and they die. So we had the following question. Maybe I shouldn't go to that meeting. Because as long as I don't go to that meeting, they can never go back to the doctor and get the prescription to kill themselves. So I'm like standing in the way of the angel of death over here. Why should I be the one that's responsible for their death? So he calls up Rav Asher Weiss. Rav Asher Weiss is one of the great poskim of our generation, and he is the official posik halacha authority of Cedar Sinai. And he asks Rabbi Weiss his question. And Rabbi Weiss tells him, not only must you go, not only should you go to that meeting, you are obligated to go to that meeting. Because you never know what you're going to say. You never know how you're going to present the details of life versus death. Maybe you'll touch a chord of sensitivity, of humanness, of spirituality inside of this person, and you'll save them from killing themselves. And he said, I want to tell you a story that happened with me. So Weiss says he once got a call, he lives in Bnei Brak, he once got a call that there's a young man in the hospital in Bnei Brak who is ready to pull the plug on his life, and he wants Rabbi Weiss to come and speak to him before he does it. So Rabbi Weiss knew who this person was. He was a young man, Nabach. He was born sick. His whole life he was very sick and very ill till it got to the point he couldn't stay home anymore. He had to be in a hospital, and he was on some kind of a life support system that was keeping him alive every day. And he had one sickness and ailment and disease after the other. He had a miserable life. Rabbi Weiss walks into the room, and this young man is lying there in the bed, life support. He looks miserable. And he says, Rabbi Weiss, I want you to give me a heter. I want you to tell me that it's okay that I can pull the plug so I can die. I cannot take this misery anymore. I live a life of Gehenna. I'm so sad, I can't take it. Please, just give me a heter that I should be able to pull the plug on my life. So Rabbi Weiss looks at this young man and he says, I can't give you a heter to do that. That's killing yourself. I cannot give you permission to kill yourself. I'm sorry. I can't. So the young man looks at him and he says, I knew you were going to answer that. So here comes my next question. I'm going to pull the plug anyway, and I'm going to kill myself right now. But I want you to promise me, Rabbi Weiss, that after I die, you will daven, you will pray for my neshama, that I shouldn't get such a harsh punishment in the world to come because I know that I'm doing the wrong thing by killing myself. So I want you to promise me that you'll daven for my neshama in the next world. Rabbi Weiss says to himself, what am I supposed to say to this boy? If I tell him I'll daven for you, so then I just gave him permission to pull the plug. If I tell him I won't daven for you, then I'm a cruel-hearted individual who doesn't care about the suffering that this man is going through. What do I tell him? So at that point, you do what every good rabbi does. You offer a special tefillah to Hashem in your mind, in your brain, and you say, please Hashem, put the right words in my mouth. So Rabbi Weiss looks at the young man, this miserable person who's lying there in bed, so despondent and so depressed, ready to pull the plug, and he says to him, I hope and I pray that you don't do what you said you're going to do and kill yourself. But if you do, I promise that I will pray for your neshama. Rabbi Weiss turns to Rabbi Weiner and he says, that story took place 3 years ago. And the boy is still alive, living on life support. You never know the words that you're going to give to another person. You never know how it might change the way that they look at themselves and their situation in life. If that young man can see the value in his unfortunate and miserable, depressed state, to continue living day after day after day because he recognizes life itself is a bracha. A breath of life is a miracle. Getting up in the morning is miraculous and it's amazing. And all of the things that happen in our life, don't forget, it's all the Ribono Shel Olam, he's running everything. Then certainly, Bayamim Haim, in these days, which were like the days of Chanukkah, where Chazal are teaching us, don't focus only on the menorah. Don't get lost in the grand miracles of life. Rather recognize that every little detail of your life is thousands upon thousands of miracles, not nature, the miracles of Hashem. Then, as the Ramban himself writes in the Chumash, you are the living embodiment of what it means to be part of Klal Yisrael. And if a person will gain this and glean this over Yom Tov of Chanukah, and we walk away more sensitive to giving our gratitude to Hashem, then the reason that Chazal made this Yom Tov lahalel ulahoidais, then you in Los Angeles, California, in Tafshin Pei, almost 2020 on the secular calendar, you are what the Chazal had in mind when they made the beautiful Yom Tov of Chanukah, for us to grow and to expand in our appreciation, in our understanding, in our awareness of the gratitude that we have to Hashem To learn how to say thank you, not just for the glass of water, not just when you get the shidduch, not just when things go your way, but to learn how to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki la'olam chazdo, on everything that He does, because His chesed is forever and ever. Chanukkah Sameach, may we be infused with the lahalel, or the haydais, the gratitude and the praises of Chanukkah.